So the gaming industry just kind of sucks right now. Like there's very little good news anywhere. So I decided to make a video where I just make it worse. Where I just add a cherry on top. I'm sorry. I want to talk about the Elder Scrolls. I want to talk about Fallout. I want to talk about BGS and all of this happening in the background and what I think it means for the franchises that you and I know and love and have been thoroughly intrigued by for many years. Because one of my most anticipated games of the next like 5 years is the Elder Scrolls 6. Not because I think it's going to be like a 10 out of 10 masterpiece, because I personally don't expect that, but rather because I am fascinated by how this is going to play out. I am so curious whether they take learnings from like Starfield and Fallout 76 and everything and actually apply that to make the game really better, or if it's just going to be Starfield with swords. Like, I'm so curious. I just want to know, right? I'm so curious. But a lot of stuff has happened in the last week or two with Bethesda Game Studios in general, but also Xbox more broadly with ZeniMax and everything else. And I think it heavily suggests that the game we were going to get a week ago is not the game we're going to get in 2028, 2029. I think that Asha Sharma has stepped in a way that Phil Spencer never did. And she is taking a very active place, I guess, position within all of these discussions. Phil Spencer's general attitude seemingly was to go hands off, let teams do whatever they want to do, and just hope it works out. That doesn't seem to be Asha Sharma's approach. She seems very on top of it, very aggressive, and very in the weeds. And that also means that she's paying very close attention to social media. In fact, one of the most common complaints from investors so far about her is that she seems too in tune with online discourse about Xbox and the brand and everything else. And as part of that, she has no doubt seen all of the demands for more Fallout games, how people think it's ridiculous that it's been 15 years since Skyrim came out and there's pretty much nothing new to talk about when it comes to Elder Scrolls, or how they've had a tremendously successful Fallout TV show and they have had basically nothing to show for it except for the Fallout 4 anniversary update, which broke freaking VATS, and it took them, I'm not joking, 19 months to fix. She's not stupid. She knows that that's insane and that there is something structurally and like functionally wrong with BGS, with how they're managing these IP, and she seemingly is done with it. As we just saw in the report from Jason Schreier, which just dropped on July 8th, where he described how Bethesda is seemingly being forced to give up the keys to their beloved IP and hand it over to Obsidian. Obsidian just underwent a bunch of layoffs. They lost a couple of art directors. They pumped the brakes on Avowed, the sequel to Avowed, and some of the other incubation projects they've been working on. And instead, now Obsidian is being tasked with making a new Fallout game. Whether that is a remake of New Vegas or if that is like a sequel to New Vegas or something totally new entirely, we don't know at this point. It seems like this decision literally made it to the studio days ago. Like, this is very, very fresh. But I think that this all indicates that Asha is taking Xbox and specifically Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and Starfield, everything in a very different direction than it was headed just a few weeks ago. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think Todd's that thrilled about it. I don't think he's that thrilled about it. I think from the little I know about Todd in watching a lot of his interviews and making an 8-hour video on Starfield, I think this is like worst case scenario for him. Like he's losing control of his baby, and I think his teams are being overhauled beyond his decision making and what he likes. And I think he's losing control of it because the gravy train that allowed him to do whatever he wanted for 20 years at a time between major releases is seemingly coming to a stop, and they've got to overhaul it and change it, and things are going to look different. Now, before you get too excited, I don't think that they are changing necessarily in the way that you might be hoping, because Asha's broader direction seems much more corporate, shocker, than you may hope to see. So I'm going to describe all of it, and we're going to put some tinfoil hats on, try to see the alignment of the stars and all of that. We're going to try to piece it together, and I'm going to make the case to you that the Elder Scrolls and Fallout projects that were going to be just a matter of weeks ago are totally different now. And I think that it may be for the best in some ways, but then it may end up being fundamentally very different than any of us were braced for, perhaps in a bad way. we'll get to it. But real quick, a thank you to our sponsor, Neverness to Everness. Neverness to Everness, or sometimes called NTE, is a 3D action role-playing game set in an open-world cyberpunk city for you to explore, hack, and slash your way through. And they are launching the massive 1.2 update to the game, which brings all sorts of new stuff. Probably most excitingly is the Warren Continent, which is a brand new medieval-themed world with all sorts of new diverse environments like volcanoes and ice fields. There's also a new main character for you to try out called Shinku, and she is an S-class damage dealer with high speed and unique combat mechanics specific to her. There's also new multiplayer modes like a 4-player competitive auction mode and the asymmetric hide and seek variant. And if you're interested in checking out the new update or just the game itself, you can check it out right now at Steam, Epic Games Store, the Galaxy Store, the Google Play Store, or the Apple App Store. And when you check out the game as a new player, you also get access to all of their new player onboarding incentives, like an S-tier character selection box and the daily check-in rewards that give you 10 pull draws. Check it out today at the link in the video description box below. Okay, so very long story short, Asha Sharma announced that they need to fire a bunch of people within Xbox because they were operating at a ridiculous margin. Like 3% is ungodly. It's just insane. So to put it very simply, Xbox was making like 3 cents for every dollar that actually came in. Most of their projects were hemorrhaging money, were losing money. Xbox specifically seems to have lost roughly $300 million by bringing Call of Duty to Game Pass. They were just hemorrhaging money, and it seems like Satya Nadella was sick and tired of subsidizing the business, so they were tasked with overhauling it. And as part of this review, she described how many things that they were doing and that they saw when they took over control of Xbox were just patently insane. She described how in some parts of the company, quote, work passes through as many as 14 layers of management. 14 layers of management. This is so patently insane. It's kind of hard to describe without like a visual representation. Gadfly over on Twitter clipped this from my stream where I tried to demonstrate it visually with PlayStation 4 game cases, where we just laid out 14 game cases to show how patently insane it is to actually go through 14 layers of managers before you can come to a decision. It's ridiculous. It is outrageous. It explains the inefficiencies, and it also explains a lot of it, because if you start to understand that like each one of these managers, middle managers, is making progressively more than the people underneath them, you can start to see how you have insane bloat, ridiculous costs, and things are taking forever while costs are ballooning. She literally says, our platform teams are 40% larger than they were at the start of this generation, even as our player base and playtime have declined. Like literally, the boat is sinking, and Phil was looking around being like, let's get some more people on here. That's what's happening. Okay, it's insane. It is ridiculous. But that's how Xbox has been run for like a decade, is that it's just nonsensical, hodgepodge ridiculousness. And it was all being done under the belief that it will just eventually work out. If we build out Game Pass and it's the best value and we've got great games on there, it will just make money. But that hasn't happened. Apparently right now they have about 30 million subscribers on Game Pass. According to the projections that Phil Spencer put forward when they were trying to do the FTC hearings to like acquire Activision Blizzard, he estimated that by 2026, they would have 77 million subs. Yeah, they missed that target. Tell you what, they thought they'd have 77 and they are stuck at 30. Bear in mind, a couple of years ago, they had 35 million. Okay, they've lost some by raising prices, making it ridiculously expensive, making it no longer the best value in gaming, and by being just generally bad at their jobs. So as part of all of this, Asha announced that they were laying off a bunch of people. That announcement came with some studio sellings and spin-offs and stuff, like with Compulsion Games, Double Fine. It looks like Arcane Lyon, who are doing Blade, they're also going to be sold off. But there weren't a lot of specifics as to the 1,600 jobs that were being cut on that day. That news took another couple of days to trickle out and for us to understand. And over the course of this week, we've gotten a clearer picture of it, mainly thanks to Steven Totillo, who shared the following. I obtained layoff notices tallying Xbox cuts in Texas and California. In Texas, ZeniMax, specifically id Software, the guys behind Doom, they are eliminating, in conjunction with Bethesda Game Studios Austin, who does Fallout 76, they're both eliminating a total combined of 158 roles, which is a lot, including 1 director of engine tech at id and 4 gameplay designers. So it's not all just engineers or like the receptionist. It's a lot of actual like game developers. Some of the people that are described in these layoffs are people that would probably fit under the definition of like middle manager, like their producers or their project managers, stuff like that. But a lot of the people that were laid off were also like actual game devs on the front line. Obsidian also announced that they were cutting 52 roles, including 2 art directors. This, though, seems to be specifically because they were ending work on the sequel to Avowed and moving forward into the Fallout project. So if you had people that were specifically specialized in the stuff they needed for the sequel to Avowed, like fantasy stuff, magic, special effects, or they were doing art direction specifically on fantasy stuff, you don't really need those people to work on a Fallout game. And so they laid off a bunch of people as they restructured in this direction. And again, some of those layoffs that were described were also at BGS Austin, the team behind Fallout 76. And there's even a report going around from Insider Gaming describing how, of course, BGS was hit with the recent layoffs that hit. In a recent report, several Bethesda employees voiced their concerns about the company's slate of games, with some suggesting that the Elder Scrolls 6 could face delays as contractors replace full-time employees. Unfortunately, it was also suggested that Fallout 76 could be impacted by the layoff in a rather drastic way. Specifically, they lost a lot of designers and people that worked on Fallout 76 and are actively working on it. IGN obtained anonymous statements from multiple developers at BGS, including one who was extremely concerned about the future of Fallout 76. They said, quote, "It seems like the company wants to make up the loss in talent with outsourcers or contracted workers. I've heard from my colleagues that they've already been asked to train new contractors. I have no idea how they'll continue updating Fallout 76 without hiring an external studio." And other interviewed developers are suggesting that Fallout 76 may be getting set up for a sunsetting, and they may even be trying to like shut it down. This would be interesting because Asha has said multiple times that she wants to double down on franchises that are big, such as Fallout and Elder Scrolls, which makes sense. I mean, I think they should do that too. I think they should have been doing that years ago, but yeah, better late than never, I guess. But it would be surprising if they decided to shut down their live service offering in that franchise, unless they have something else planned. Unless they have another trick up their sleeve, perhaps. Well, maybe if we can see a pattern developing, maybe if they're also going to pivot away from other live service offerings that they have and try to reshift and recalibrate around new launches instead of just preserving games like Fallout 76 that launched in 2018, almost a decade ago, you know? Well, Stephen Tortilla also reported here with some more information. This is pulled off of a website from Maryland where you have to report like mass layoffs and resizing of companies, restructurings and stuff to give notices to those employees. And you can see here, ZeniMax Online Studios is reporting, I didn't know this, but apparently there is a city in Maryland called Cockeysville, which is awesome. I want to build a company there. But you can see that they are laying off an estimated 213 people. If you're not clear, ZeniMax Online Studios, they are the guys that were working on Elder Scrolls Online and Project Blackbird. Project Blackbird was going to be Microsoft's version of Destiny, apparently. But it may not ring a bell because just a year ago in July, actually July 3rd of 2025, I posted this stream clip, which you could watch on Luke Stevens Live, my second channel. You absolutely should be following and subscribe to that, by the way. But we posted this stream clip describing how Microsoft had just laid off, again, almost a year ago exactly, a lot of people at ZeniMax Online Entertainment. Pretty much the entire team behind Project Blackbird was laid off. A bunch of other people quit who were in positions of leadership above them. And this seemed to be the first nail in the coffin, but they have been hit with another round of layoffs, specifically the team that's working on Elder Scrolls Online. So we are seeing mass layoffs to the teams behind Fallout 76 and also to the team behind Elder Scrolls Online, which are both the live service cash cow variants of the big IP that Asha seemingly wants to double down on. I mean, maybe she is just delusional and thinks that you can just hire contractors to keep pumping out content to make those games successful. Maybe, or maybe there's another plan. You see, here we have to put on some tinfoil hats a little bit, okay? We're gonna get into the realm of allegation and suspicion. I wanna be very, very clear about this. None of what I'm about to go through is confirmed. It's all alleged based on coincidence and circumstance, okay? All on the same page? Okay. You see, one thing you have to understand about Bethesda Game Studios specifically within the broader context of Xbox is that they are one of the biggest studio groups that is unionized pretty thoroughly too. Even their smaller branches like in Montreal or Dallas and Austin, like they're all unionized apparently, from my understanding at least. And that means that effectively all of the employees can come together, at least the employees that are part of the union, they can come together and collectively bargain. That means that they can negotiate higher pay. A lot of what this tends to look like at studios like this, again, tinfoil hats, bear with me, I'm painting the picture. A lot of what that tends to look like is higher pay for senior members of the company. The longer you've been there, the more you should get paid because you've given the company more of your life. If you've been there for 30 years, you should make more money in that role than somebody they just hired off the street. Kind of makes sense, right? Or other things like negotiating worker protections against like crunch culture. So you can only work 40 hours in the week. If you work more than that, then it flags a bunch of stuff for the union and the company gets in trouble, pays penalties and overtime, all that stuff. So it does a lot in addition to just generalized collective bargaining for higher pay and wages, benefits, packages, stuff like that. It does a lot to make the life of employees better, which is why devs want to work at unionized studios. The problem comes along with, how do I say this? Microsoft allegedly, hypothetically, in an alternative timeline in Roblox, doesn't love unions. They just don't. There's been lots of allegations over the years that Microsoft will conveniently have a round of layoffs at a branch or a company or a team or wherever. If there are rumblings of unionization, if they are actively unionizing, if they just unionized and they just want to rip the Band-Aid off and shut it down before it gets out of control, that's just how Microsoft tends to do it. They don't tend to encourage unionization, you know? It's a pattern you'll start to see all across the whole company, which is that often areas of the company that become unionized are not part of the company for very long. There's been lawsuits filed by unions for like union busting, for things that, you know, are alleged that Microsoft did to like punish them. And this isn't just a Microsoft thing. This happens all over the place with every major corporation because major corporations just generally don't like paying employees more. Like, shocker. I feel like I'm not breaking any news here. I think everybody's aware of it. But I just want to be clear, this is something that has been a common thread and common pattern across Microsoft for a while now. And we saw it again last year in July when they laid off a bunch of people at ZeniMax, because ZeniMax Online Entertainment, who were working on Project Blackbird, conveniently just so happened to have recently unionized shortly before the layoffs hit. Like, they weren't even done negotiating contracts when the layoffs were announced. Like, it was very fresh. And it was like, what? Interesting. What a coinkydink. Tell you what. And once you notice this, you can start to look elsewhere for smoke because you start to sniff it and you wonder, hey, it seems like there's smoke here. Maybe there's more smoke elsewhere, and then maybe we can find the fire. Remember how I described how like one of the things that big companies don't like about unions is that often you have to pay senior employees a lot more? Well, what is one of the common threads with these revealed layoffs? At both id Software, the guys behind Doom, who suffered massive layoffs, but also within BGS generally. Well, we've seen stories like this one, Christiane Meister. As you can see, Idle Sloth tweeted this out. Xbox just laid off Christiane Meister, 27-year veteran. 27-year veteran. A core Bethesda artist who worked on Skyrim, Oblivion, Morrowind, Fallout 3, Fallout 4. Seriously, like an OG. Her credits are on like freaking everything from 1999 through today. She's worked on freaking everything, okay? She is a legend. She's like behind the design of the Khajiit. Like, she's an OG, okay? And she was fired, as have other people in senior levels of leadership and direction and game design within Bethesda Game Studios across all of their branches. And it starts to really look like senior members who are being paid a lot more because of the unionization contracts and stuff like this. Senior members who have been there for a long time are key to the company culture. They are being let go. And I think it tells us a couple of key things. Number one is that if there is some allegation made against Microsoft that they are trying to break up unionized teams and stuff, what they are able to counter with is that no, this was a cost-cutting measure. They can say we went and we laid off employees who were making the most because we were trying to save money with the layoffs. So we went to the senior members and we laid them off because they were making more than the junior members. And that's why we did it that way. And, you know, it's just about saving money. And I think that that is probably the justification that they will have. Honestly, like, maybe this is like not something you're supposed to talk about super openly, but like in business school, it's like understood that when companies need to do mass layoffs like this or major restructurings or whatever, you will bring in consultants and like consultancy firms who come in and like coldly evaluate everybody. Like their job is to not think about people on a personality level. They come in from outside specifically because they don't know anybody. They don't put names to employees. They literally will label them in a spreadsheet and delete the name because they don't want to make decisions for who's hired, who's fired, who stays, who moves based on anything like seniority, like their relationships within the studio, such as like their gender or race. They don't want any of that to affect it. They just put a number on everybody. And in the spreadsheet, they sort by these factors: how much they charge, how much they make, whether or not they have like skills nobody else has, whether they're in a position of direct leadership over a team, all of that stuff. And then they do the calculation and hand over a sheet to the manager and say, this is who you fire. And that's basically how it works. And I think that's probably what happened here. And that's why I think it's like this is a big deal. Okay. This type of thing is a big deal because it is the quintessential example of how Microsoft runs things, not Xbox, Microsoft. They often allegedly treat people just like a number, and it doesn't really matter if you have experience or senior tenure or that sort of like institutional knowledge where you've been around the block countless times and you know these things and how this works. It doesn't matter because you're just a number, right? And I think you can run a team that's doing Windows security updates like that, because if this person that's been working with Microsoft for 25 years gets laid off, you can probably go and hire a contractor from India and they will do just as good a job in terms of like the raw technical stuff, and they'll charge you comparatively nothing, you know, in comparison. But with video games, it's different. Like you just can't run an artistic pursuit the same way you run more of an engineering pursuit. Like they're different things. And I feel like this is going to bite them in the freaking ass. I think this is a terrible idea. And I don't think, to like Todd's credit, I don't think this is a decision he would make. I don't think Todd would go and lay off somebody that he's known for 30 freaking years. Let's just be totally honest about that. I don't think so. I think if Todd were making the decisions as to who's hired and who's fired and who keeps their job and who moves, I think he would keep the people he's known for 30 years. I think he would keep the people he can trust, that he knows how to work with, and he'd keep those people that are OGs. This to me looks like it was a decision made by an outside consultancy firm that comes in, puts everything in a spreadsheet, gives people a number, and then chooses who gets to keep their job or not based on the spreadsheet. That's what I think this is. I think this is above even like Todd's head. And I think that a lot of what's happening is beyond his control, frankly. At the time I'm recording this video, we don't know exact details as to how many people in Maryland specifically have been laid off. For example, in these layoff descriptions that Stephen Totillo reported, it does outline ZeniMax Media Incorporated in Rockville, Maryland as part of these layoffs, with 166 people listed. The address given on that layoff document does go to the ZeniMax headquarters, where there are some people that work like with BGS that are apparently located there, because of course BGS is also located in Rockville, Maryland as well. But it's not clear, again, like who all is included in the layoffs, if that includes members of BGS or not. We just don't know. One person I saw reporting on this described how this is the corporate office that's in charge of BGS. So if they had to disclose layoffs at like BGS specifically, they would do it through the company that owns them for sake of Maryland's reporting laws and regulations and stuff. But I don't know if that's true. This is the location that's been in like all of the videos and stuff for years and years, but it's my understanding that BGS specifically spun off into a separate office space, so they have a different address. But again, I'm not totally sure. It's possible that more people within BGS specifically were laid off, and we just don't know exact details of how many. But I think clearly and obviously some people within the team were laid off. It could be 20 or 30, or it could be a good chunk of these 166. We just don't know as of the time I'm recording this video. But what I think is clear is that by firing senior members of your team and relying more on contractors and by relying more on novice members of the team, that probably doesn't help make Elder Scrolls 6 and Fallout 5 and these games in the way that Todd probably intended them to be made, right? And this is something even employees are currently echoing. Elder Scrolls 6 will suffer because of Xbox layoffs, Bethesda staff say, fearing delays, crunch, and generational talent being replaced by contractors, which I think is probably fair. These people spoke on the condition of anonymity, and this is something maybe this is common, and I just don't know. I've never seen this before, but apparently the Bethesda Game Studios Union made memorials. They made memorials within like the office. So in Dallas, they made a memorial. And then in Rockville, Maryland, they went and also made memorials for their coworkers who were fired and let go. I think it's sweet. I don't know. It feels weird to like mourn people who aren't dead, but I get it. I don't know how to feel about it though. I'm just going to be real. Like they're okay, right? Like Microsoft didn't do something worse, right? I want to make sure. But anyway, as you can see, IGN describes how Bethesda Game Studio locations have removed more than 50 employees so far that have been counted, including, quote, key high-performing people in the trenches building the company's long-awaited Skyrim successor. This, in turn, they say, has shattered morale, raising the risk of future development crunch and increased likelihood that the game's already far-off completion date will be delayed. They're already describing how this could lead to a delay. And I just want to remind everybody that in March, Todd Howard said Elder Scrolls 6 was still a long way off when speaking to IGN. And beyond that, Jason Schreier said in a Bloomberg Live Q&A thing that he did that as of a couple of days ago, Bethesda Game Studios' next Elder Scrolls game was at least 2 or more years away, putting it 2028 or 2029. So a delay because of these firings and restructurings could push the game into like 2030 or 2031, which is wild. Now, before we get into like the main question of the video, let's just address the elephant in the room. Bethesda's output has been pretty abysmal for a while. As I said earlier, they broke Fallout 4 with the anniversary update that just like straight up broke VATs, and it took them 19 months to fix it. That's ridiculous. That's stupid. That should be unacceptable. And so a lot of people are hearing this news of mass layoffs and they're kind of taking the stance that like, yeah, good, they had it coming. And I don't want to do that because I think that the people who are being punished with layoffs are like the talented people. I think personally, based on all of the research and again, interviews and stuff that I've read and watched, I think BGS's problems are more managerial. I think it's more structural. I think it's a lot of bloat. It's those 14 layers of management that are clogging things up. And I think that's where most of their problems are coming from, personally, okay? I don't think it's the individuals on the ground level that are causing all of these hiccups. So I just want to get that out there up front. But having said that, the main thing at the core of this video and everything that we're talking about is what seems to be a fundamental disconnect, a dissonance between two factors, which is that Asha Sharma is telling everybody publicly she wants to double down on their biggest franchises. She wants to double down on Fallout, on Elder Scrolls. She doesn't say Starfield, which makes sense, but she says Elder Scrolls and Fallout. And then she also says like Doom, and she wants to double down on Quake and stuff. She says all this stuff, but then the actions seem to do the opposite, at least as we know it today. She is laying off senior people within BGS. She's gutting the team at id Tech. She's doing all of this stuff that doesn't seem to go in line with what she says her goal is. But that is only true if you look at it from the lens of how things have been functioning for a decade or 2 decades, which is that effectively the franchises that they want to double down on have been controlled by one team at a time. And if we look at raw performance, if we look at delivery timelines and everything, those teams have seemingly struggled to deliver on what has been demanded of them. Specifically, Doom: The Dark Ages seems like it was a commercial miss. It did not perform particularly well, and the DLC that launched just a handful of days ago also seems to have underperformed expectations. Under Phil Spencer, that was fine because it just had to go onto Game Pass and be part of the catalog. Under Asha, that is unacceptable. But then if we flip it around and we look at Elder Scrolls and Fallout, BGS/ZeniMax have had total control of those IP for what, 15 years at this point, 16 years effectively. They allowed, of course, ZeniMax Online Entertainment to do ESO, or Elder Scrolls Online. They've been doing their own thing with that forever. And then beyond that, Fallout has stayed completely relegated within BGS. Even for mobile games, the mobile games have to be made by Bethesda Game Studios. They opened up another branch in Montreal specifically to work on the mobile games. Some of those still exist today and are still operational, probably making a bit of money. Others have been abandoned or shut down. But the point is, the way things have worked for 16 years is that Todd gets to keep control of the IP, but has that worked out for them? I think for Asha, the same way she looks at Doom the Dark Ages underperforming financially, she looks at Todd's delivery of product and says, I have to wait 20 years for another Fallout. I have to wait 18, 19 years for another Elder Scrolls game. You announced this one 8 years ago, which, by the way, is true. They announced Elder Scrolls 6 in June of 2018. June of 2018. And there has not been a single lick of new content, new trailer, new art, nothing. And apparently it's still a ways off, a long ways off, and it's potentially getting delayed. Jason Schreier saying that it's at least 2, maybe more years away. That's insane. That's ridiculous. And I think for Asha, that is just as much of a failure as if it launched and kind of did middling. Because for her, she doesn't want the promise and hope of a financial windfall, maybe in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And even if they release Elder Scrolls 6 and it performs really great, the idea that she will then have to wait another 6 to 8 years, I almost said 6, 7, 6 to 8 years just for the next game, the next Fallout game to come out, like that is, I think, unacceptable to her. So if you look at it through that lens and you realize, okay, if I'm an executive and I find 20 years between Fallout games unacceptable, and I think that is insane that we're waiting 18 years between Elder Scrolls games, what would I do? And then you see the other piece of the puzzle start to click in place, which is the revelation from Jason Schreier again, that Microsoft is assigning Obsidian, after laying off some people, telling them to stop work on some of the stuff they were doing, they're assigning them to a new Fallout game. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's other teams that are going to be assigned to new Elder Scrolls stuff. If they're going to do a spin-off game for Elder Scrolls as well, that is going to be basically the New Vegas for Elder Scrolls. And instead of Avowed, that's what you're going to get. And you get another Fallout New Vegas remake, or you get a sequel to it or something. And they turn it into a franchise that's run by Xbox, not by Todd. I think that's what she's doing. I think Doom and Quake will see the light of day again, but maybe by a different team, because I think she found, id Software's delivery and performance underwhelming. I think she's found Bethesda Game Studios' delivery and execution underwhelming. So even if she's losing generational talent with layoffs within BGS, it doesn't matter that much, because a lot of the weight is going to be picked up by other teams like Obsidian. She's going to have other teams come in and take the mantle to try and lift some of the weight, because it seems like BGS can't carry it all themselves. And this is such a fundamental shift in how this has worked for so long that I'm sure it feels insane within BGS, within ZeniMax, within Bethesda Softworks and everything. But I'm not sure what else you would expect her to do. I mean, she could take the route that Phil Spencer did, which was for years and years, you just let Todd do whatever he wants to do. You let each team do whatever they want to do and hope it works out. That clearly didn't work, given where we are today. It didn't work out too good for anybody. And I think that Asha wants to take a much more active role. And her goal is to basically take these IP and make the IPs the star of the show. The IP are not going to be tied down to one specific developer. They're going to spread out. Because what she's doing is she's looking at this as an outsider, as an executive. She's come in from a separate entity and business entirely. I mean, she got started, I think, with Instacart, okay? Like, that's her background, along with the core AI stuff within Microsoft. She's not from gaming. So for her, she's looking at it, and what are the most successful products and pieces of entertainment media in the world right now? It's stuff like Call of Duty. It's stuff like Fortnite. And these games are made by multiple studios that trade off work and shift stuff and work collaboratively. It's not run by just one team within one building, run by one guy. And I think that that's what she's going to do. I think she's going to step in. The IP are going to become the centerpiece, and it's going to be a much more of a system of studios working to support the IP as opposed to one studio being in charge of this. And if they screw up the game, too bad, you got to wait 20 years for the next one and hope they do better. And that's what I mean when I said at the beginning of the video that, like, in some ways, maybe it's good news, because in some ways you could look at this and be like, oh, cool. Like we're going to get Fallout games more frequently than every 20 years. That's good news. But on the other side, I think it is potentially bad news because they are losing that generational talent. They are losing those people that have worked on this game or franchise for decades. They are losing the old guard, and that's being left behind. And they're going to try to fill in the gaps, let's be real, with contractors and AI tools and whatever else they can get to decrease costs. So I would expect we're going to get a lot more games. I wouldn't expect them to be like generational masterpieces, or maybe not even good, but I do think we'll get more of them. And I think that that's all part of this broader strategy, is it's reduce costs, get more of these games out, even if they're not 10 out of 10s. If they launch and they're, 75s out of 100, good enough. At least we got a product out the door that got people kind of excited and kept the franchise in people's minds so that they didn't have to wait 20 years between releases. I think that's what's happening, but it's just a theory, a game theory. Whatever happened to that guy? I think he retired, didn't he? Where is Matt Pat? I don't even know. Oh, he like straight up retired. Oh, that's good. Good for him. Good for him. That's awesome. He did it. That's wonderful. I guess I just mentally checked out. Anyway, that was a distraction. Let me know your thoughts on all of this, whether you think that I'm onto something or if you think that this is, maybe it's just going to be business as usual, but she's just firing people indiscriminately and there's not much rhyme or reason to it. That's possible too. I think in some ways this could be explained. All of this could be explained just by hand waving it away and just going, they're just being stupid and not thinking ahead and they're firing senior people because they get paid more. Maybe that is all it is. But I think it explains it better to see that she's looking well beyond Maryland. She's looking well beyond one studio for these IP. She's expecting to spread the IP out to a lot of different teams and a lot of different places. So even if you're losing some of this talent, it's worth it to lower the cost because the slack is picked up elsewhere. I think that's what's happening, but let me know what you think. Maybe it is just stupidity. I think we'll find out soon enough. I just think in general, when you're looking at something like this and pieces of it don't make sense, you're like, she says she wants to double down on franchises, but she's firing people making those franchises. If something isn't making sense, it's usually because you're missing a piece of the puzzle or you're not looking at it from the right angle. And once you look at it from a new angle, it starts to make sense. That's when you know you're onto something. It doesn't mean that her decision is right. It doesn't mean that this is the correct decision or direction for the company, but it does explain why she's doing it this way. But anyway, that's just me. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Make sure to like and subscribe as well, because we're trying to pass 700,000 subs by the end of July. And I think we're actually well on track for that. So make sure to subscribe to be in the first 700,000. And hang that on your wall, I guess. I mean, or don't subscribe, whatever. I'm not your dad. Do whatever you want. I'm just glad to have you here watching. And if you made it to the end of the video, that's awesome. Thanks for chilling with me. Much love. I'll see you in the next one. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye. Me and Todd are going to bed.